Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to be comparing manuscript 133 to Lignitzer. Now, a lot of people when they look at 133, they assume that it's more closely related to Sword and Shield because it's from an earlier time period, around 1300. Compared to Lignitzer, who's about 100 years later, they assume that that is a fighting style that reflects a later time period. And I believe that that's incorrect. Just because something was put into print um, earlier doesn't necessarily mean that that is, the earlier fighting style. I believe that the two basically had been around for quite some time before they were put into print. Now, the reason why I say this, if we look at 133, we see a lot of blade-on-blade contact. Okay, so regardless what guard you start off from, right? When you come in, you gain blade to blade contact, and you're basically working from that blade. You're winding. Only when you get a press and you're controlling the other person's blade, are you free to make a cut somewhere. Okay, so we see a lot of that blade on blade contact, which is really similar to rapier fencing. And if I take the buckler away, and here I am. I'm trying to get my strong on their weak, push the blade aside, come in for a thrust. So, with 133, all we're doing is we've added a buckler for some additional defense, okay? So to me, 133 looks like a later period fencing style. Now, when I look at Lignitzer utilizes a lot of cuts. And if we, if we look at, let's say, later period fighting with the rotella, okay, we also see that they use a lot of cuts, and the reason is because if you have a larger shield, you need to make cuts in order to get around your shield and to get around your opponent's shield. Let me get a larger shield for a second. So with the large shield, basically, as I'm facing off over here, the shield controls the center line. So my sword is free to attack anywhere. Okay, so I can use changing cuts like Lignitzer uses, where it comes in one direction and then changes to another. I can use Unterhaus. I can use a Stretchhau. Whether you do a Stretchhau like that or you do a Stretchhau like that. You can use all these type of cuts, from different angles and different directions because the shield is controlling the center line. And the sword is free to move around on its own, independently, because you basically have a disconnected offense-defense, and the sword can strike at different places. Now, when I go back to the buckler, now because the buckler is smaller, I'm somewhat limited. I mean, I can still, like if I have control of this person's sword here, I mean, yes, I can come around and make a cut, but my cuts, are usually going to be working around the smaller buckler, if I do make any cuts. And if we look at 133, there's a lot more of this blade-on-blade contact as they're fighting. We see that they got blade on blade, they're pressing down. Only when they have control, when they have the other person's blade on their buckler, do they free their sword, and attack, the legs or some other opening. Okay, so with the larger shield, you're able to the sword is able to work independently, and that's what I see in Lignitzer. In Lignitzer, you will typically see, if you look at just any one of his plays, you'll see, let's say, one thrust with 3 or 4 cuts. Okay, and if you look at 133, you see a you see a thrust with some winding and maybe one cut from there. Okay, so there's a lot less cuts. There's a lot less of the sword moving around from different directions and different angles, and I believe it's because in that tradition they're working with a smaller buckler, and the sword has to control the center line. Okay, the sword has to be on defense. You cannot rely on something this small for defense. In Lignitzer's plays, you see that he is moving the sword around a lot more. He is using a lot more different angles from his cuts. You'll see him, go from, he'll come in, he'll go from right side Rorschach, left side Rorschach. With the small buckler, I really can't take off and come all the way around to this side unless unless the person's sword is on my buckler, and while I'm in the process of moving from one side to the other, he can free it and strike it. Okay? So that's really not a good thing to do with a small buckler. With the small buckler, if I'm on the right side and I want to go to the left side, I'm going to try and make a very small movement like this, where I basically stay very close to this person's sword. I don't want to get too far away from the sword, because they're going to hit me with it. Okay, with the larger shield, you can do that. So with the larger shield, Lignitzer's plays do make a lot more sense. Where he's working up here, and then all of a sudden he goes down to the leg. It's because the shield's controlling the center line, or possibly the larger buckler that he might be using, or even if he is using a smaller buckler, even if he is using a buckler like that, I believe that he's carrying forward from an earlier tradition where they were using larger shields. So there are my thoughts on that. If you guys have any questions, comments, any counter videos you want to link, by all means put in the comments section. If you're not a member of my channel, subscribe. Look forward to seeing you guys next time.